Hello and welcome to the Metapod, a Pokemon TCG podcast that revolves around the evolving meta. This is 65 episodes in a row that I think Shaun has smiled every time I've done that intro. I notice it every single week. Shaun's bright and shining smile here on YouTube that you can go watch us on. Also, if you're listening on iTunes, Spotify, any of those other audio softwares, thank you so much. Glad to have you here. Shaun, how are you doing this today?
How am I doing this today?
Just started.
I'm doing good. This is the last week of my work proper, so that's exciting for me. Which should mean that you'd think that maybe I'll have time to play more Pokemon. Maybe we will see. Hopefully, but I don't like to play online.
Say, you've been playing Pokemon the other week on your stream when you were at a Digimon Locals tournament. You started out the stream playing some Pokemon with a buddy.
Yeah. When I do like local streams now, especially I have a couple of friends who play Pokemon. Like they're my Pokemon friends who I got into Digimon. But like we still like playing, so we're just like, hey, did you bring your Pokemon deck? And then we just pop out our Pokemon deck.
And I'm going to be honest, aside from trying to get the cards from like the new sets, especially like Evolving Skies and stuff, like the format's kind of fun right now. Like probably the best in my opinion for a while.
Yes, I would agree. Like we'll talk about some of the new decks popping up that, once you have a playset of, I think, some key cards, specifically like Inteleons and Drizzile and that stuff, and the main trainers, all you really need, most of the decks use a decent amount of the same cards now. So it's like, I just need kind of the top end, like what the spice of this deck is. You can just kind of swap things in and out, and it doesn't feel like any deck is particularly oppressive right now from what I'm seeing and hearing.
And speaking of getting certain things, we got a lot of stuff to talk about here on this podcast, including some of the talk between some of the premium collection exclusives. There's been a little bit of confusion that I've seen about what is where and what is coming out. So we're going to talk about where you can get which thing, because it's honestly kind of confusing, and I don't 100% know why they did this. But I'm not the boss. But also VUnions, if you were lucky enough to get either a code or the box, because holy moly, I saw so many people complain about not being able to get the codes this weekend for VUnions. We've got the first impressions of those after the first weekend, and then also some secret rares revealed that I found were very pretty, and I kind of think we should talk about.
Yeah. But Jake, I guess this week I think is your week to do the review. So do you want me to throw it on over to the review for you?
I've got the review. Wait, what does the title say? I only see super solid and profesh.
That is, well, super solid and professional podcast. Smiley face.
It cuts off on the phone.
Okay.
But this is from the janitor. So you got back into the Pokemon TCG this summer and started listening to a few different PTCG podcasts, and have landed on you guys from the 5-star review. I appreciate hearing the general Pokemon news and your discussion of it, because it's like you like the PTCG, you like mostly everything Pokemon, and I don't have a lot of people to geek out about it to, or have time to keep up with it at all. There's honestly, like, real talk for a second, there's a lot to keep up with Pokemon TCG, I feel like, so 100% feel you right there. I have trouble catching up on it all the time. When discussing the card game, I really appreciate how relatively focused you guys stay on topic for the episode. It makes it easier to follow along and process for my use of it. I also appreciate how you guys aren't afraid to debate each other about the cards and strategies. Shaun, I still think your campaign of Beat Eternatus was hot trash. Anyways, moving on. I was just kidding. Where was I? It makes fun and engages my own critical thinking about all of it too. One of the suggestions is to avoid using acronyms or say the full name of one in each episode and then use the acronym for the rest of the episode, just in case someone new listens to the episode, so they're not like, oh geez, I'm lost, and stop listening. Keep up the great and consistent work. Oh, and Jake, you have a great host voice too. Wow, look at that ending there. That's a 5-star ending if I've ever heard one.
It's a little biased, I would say, just a smidge, but
you know what, Shaun? I'm just gonna say this: we are a 5-star rated podcast. We are a tag team duo, and we are in it to win it. Yes. Shaun, but I kind of agree. Like sometimes, when we're like acronyming things, I feel like at times, sometimes it can be a little bit confusing, especially like deck archetypes.
Yeah,
I feel like.
I think because deck names, they tend to have like some really strange, or they have in the past had like really strange names. I think though, it's not as bad as it used to be, because most of the time, I think the problem was ADP, right? Like ADP is payroll software for most people. So like, I totally get that. And then people would say things like Reshizard or Pikarom. And I guess like, if you're not familiar with the card, it's like, that means nothing to me. So fair enough.
Yeah, we'll try our best. I love this comment, by the way, not only because of the kind words, but also the constructive criticism, because that's a huge part of, what helps Shaun and I get better week by week. So really, really appreciate that again. But Shaun, you know what else I appreciate?
What is that?
I appreciate beautiful cards.
Mm-hmm.
And Fusion Arts, the Secret Rares, the new set coming out soon, Fusion, or part of Fusion Strike that's coming out for us in November. The cards in Japan have been revealed for Fusion Arts, and some of these are absolutely beautiful, Shaun.
Mm.
So just kind of glancing over them, because our audio listeners won't necessarily be able to see what we're talking about. Which cards do you think that they should go look up right now?
I mean, if you love doggos, I'll start with this Bolton V alternate art. It's interesting. It's like, how like some of the alternate arts, there's like a nice scene that they paint in the background, and then others of which are just kind of like a color palette background.
Yes.
This one, it's mostly the color palette, but it's not like a generic wash. It's like little lightning bolts and things like that. And also, Bolton just looks so happy. He just looks so happy in this alt art.
I mean, just an absolute beautiful dog. I mean, dogs just sticking out their mouth and they're like,
yeah,
absolutely, chef's kiss in this art. Absolutely adorable.
How about you, Jake? What's the first one that comes to your mind?
One of the first ones that come to my mind, not only does it have an excellent art, the Genesect V special art right there. You can see kind of Genesect doing some no, the alternate art, Shaun.
Oh.
The alternate art. Yes. It's doing, Genesect's got some breakdancing, and it's featuring one of my favorite Pokemon from Gen 2, Smeargle. Absolutely love Smeargle. Getting some limelight in the I said single strike Genesect. I meant Fusion Strike Genesect.
We got a whole new strike now.
Yeah, there's a whole new type called Fusion Strike now. But the thing that's also really cool about this, not only is it an excellent art, but this card is nuts. The ability, once during your turn, you may draw cards until you have as many cards in your hand as you have Fusion Strike Pokemon in play. Very, very cool, in my opinion. We love draw support on this Pokemon. It is a metal type Pokemon, so that is really interesting to note. Metal Saucer is still something in the format. And for 2 metal and 1 colorless, 210 damage. This Pokemon can't attack during your next turn. We know ways to get around that. Doesn't matter. Not that big of a deal. But the 210 damage is good because this knocks out most opposing Pokemon Vs.
Yeah,
Shaun. So this Genesect, I think, is going to make its way into a couple decks. And not only is it a good card, I think it's a very pretty card as well. This is one that I would love for my collection.
Yeah, it is really gorgeous. I will say, the Genesect V that I pulled up prior to that, look at me in the eye and tell me this isn't a Digimon card. This is clearly
you pulled up this card, and in my head, I was like, Shaun, 1, that's the wrong card that I was referring to. But 2, this is still like a really cool card because, like, for those of you that can't see, it's Genesect like doing a little like pose or whatever, like action pose. But in the background, kind of what Shaun was talking about with Bolton, it's not just like a single color palette. Like there's like electronic, like gizmo, like if you were looking through a sniper scope or whatever, it's like I don't even know like how to explain it.
Imagine like the way that the 90s tried to represent what it was like inside a computer, right? Like,
yes,
like computer-y graphic thing inside. That's why I'm like, I looked at this card it's the first time I've seen it, and I'm like, this is straight up a Digimon. Like, let's be frank here. We talk about Digimon being a rip-off Pokemon, which like I'm fully, maybe the Digimon fans out there will hate me for this, but I agree. I think Digimon is kind of a weird ripoff in some ways. But with Genesect, they played the Uno reverse card, and it's like, no, you. And they were like, no, this is a Digimon copy right here. It's what is this? Anyways,
these are actually some very, very cool cards. I highly recommend going on PokeBeach's website, which is what we're looking up these cards. I mean, this set, I feel like Fusion Strike is going to be very, very beautiful. Sean's pulling up the Mew V right now. Oh my gosh, that alternate art.
This is the money card, right? Like everybody in the set. I'm looking at the rest of the cards here, and let's be frank, outside of some of the full art supporters, which are cool, but this is going to be your Rayquaza V alternate art, right? Like this is the Mew. It's the Mew V alternate art. It features one of your favorite Pokemon's again in Smeargle. It also has a little baby Dragapult, or is it like I guess this isn't Dragapult.
That's a Toxel and Toxtricity, Sean.
Well, there's a Toxel, but on top of Mew's head.
Oh, that's Dreepy.
Yeah, you got Dreepy.
I didn't see that little guy.
Dreepy just coming along for a ride on top of Mew's head. So, like, everything about this is adorable. And then the leg of something else, which I'm not... Maybe that's a Hoopa? Is that a Hoopa leg? What's happening here? I don't know. But...
I'm actually not 100%. I think it is a Hoopa leg because Hoopa is one of the Fusion Vs in this set.
But
just like a lot of other cards, you know, we've seen like the Medicham have a whole bunch of like Rapid Strike Pokemon on it. This Mew has a bunch of the Fusion Strike Pokemon on it. So another cool like little tidbit.
Now, the one thing I'm not seeing, which is a little surprising. Oh no, there is the VMAX. Okay, I don't want to skip ahead before we talk about one of the other alternate arts, Jake, that you might want to talk about.
I kind of want to talk about Sydney Full Art.
Ooh.
Now this man, for those of you that don't know, he's in the bathroom and he looks like he just licked his hands and he's sliding it across. He looks like he's about to ask like out the girl of his dreams right there. He's full, he's confident. He's almost like a delinquent. Like he's a bad man. He's slicking back the one tuft of hair like he's got passion on his head. He's a weird looking dude.
I will say it is a cool, like, it's not like the typical full art trainer kind of style. It's like, it's a little grungy, but it's like, there's like a lot of personality in this character right now, which I think sometimes like they're not pretty, but like you'll get characters like this, which are like, a little generic. Like the costume is interesting, but otherwise somewhat generic pose.
We're talking about Dancer, by the way. Dancer Full Art. Pretty card, not a very notable character, literally at all.
You got the trio here. Very cool. I don't know. A lot of cool stuff.
Sean, do you want to mention one card because I mentioned two?
I mean, I'll just mention the VMAX of Mew because I think, again, looking back at Rayquaza, this one is going to be a hot commodity as well. I don't know what the... Maybe you can explain this to me, Jake. All of the imagery here of different buses and a cab and what looks to be like a police box or a telephone box. Is there... I'm going to say because like Sword and Shield, right? This is a Sword and Shield era card. Sword and Shield is based out of like London, the UK, like that kind of thing. And so like you see the telephone box, the cab and stuff, like those are kind of things that you would expect to see over there if you were to go to that country. So that's my impression of it. Now, is that right? That's a whole other conversation. I think you're right. I think that makes sense. The one thing I would have loved to have seen, which is, you know, I don't know if this is a cultural thing in Japan, but you could have done a blue telephone box. It's just that little nod to Doctor Who. You know what I mean?
I feel like if they did that, though, then Doctor Who's going to be like, give me some money. Give me some money for that.
A blue telephone box, it's just a blue telephone box, right? Those were police boxes back in the day. Now, it may be that they didn't want... Because this one right here, this looks like the box is not like a proper telephone box, but instead the ones that the guards outside of Windsor Castle stand in for shade. On certain hot days, it looks more like a guard box than it does a telephone box. I'm getting really deep into the details here, Jake, but...
I was going to say, you've lost me there, Sean. I don't know what Windsor Castle is. I'm going to be honest. I'm not that smart.
Or like Buckingham Palace. So people who've been there, you know, if you look at the card, I think you'll immediately go, oh, yeah, those are little guard towers that they have outside of Buckingham Palace. So I think that's what that is, not a police box or a telephone box.
You know what we can distinguish what is real, Sean? 3 premium collection boxes that are coming into stores for the Pokemon trading card game. We're going to go over them one by one. It's very interesting because there are 3 different exclusive premium collection boxes coming in 3 different stores. One is an exclusive to each store. So I know a lot of people may be confused about that. So we're just going to lay down the groundwork right here, right now, tell you if you want this box, this is where you should get it. Because these dates are coming up soon, about a month away, at least. So Shaun, do you want to take away the first one?
I mean, the first one, I don't think we've talked about this specific box yet. It's the Mythical Squishies, which it's very cute, right? They're basically, you get a Victini, a Celebi, and a Mew V. From the looks of it, it is the good Victini, and then the Mew and the Celebi are the only ones that we have thus far. So, but we're getting a better Mew anyway. So in terms of like, they're not even like the full art or special art promos. They're just pretty standard arts. But you know, it's cute, I suppose. And you get like 8 packs, which is fine. But this is the one that you only can get at Target. So this is, you know, when they were all at the bidding table to see which collection everybody would get, Target, I think, got shafted. And you'll see why. Jake, what is the next one?
I hold on one second, because you didn't really mention the big ticket. What I think is the big ticket about this box. You get 3 plushies in this box, Shaun.
Oh, that's
You get
fair.
a Mew plushie, you get a Victini plushie, and you get a Celebi plushie. Plushies that I believe are only going to be, well, it doesn't exactly say plushies. It says lovable, cuddly, squishy toys. And they're like foam figures. So they're not like actually plushies, but they're like little like squishy figures that are real cool. And you know how I feel about like stress balls and like shuffling cards in my hand, Shaun. So this is the winner right here.
Are you going to get this so you can, when you're stressed, start squeezing Mew vigorously?
I might actually, but I don't know if I'm going to be able to find this box. Product's not the easiest thing to find, Shaun.
No, you're not wrong. Jake, what to that? But I will say, like, we can actually go. I think this is the last place of all of these products. What do you think the second place of these products? So who got second place in the
I see you immediately. For those of you watching on the YouTube video, you'll know that when Shaun said second, he immediately scrolled down to the very bottom of the page, hinting that this was the second place one.
It's up to you,
I agree. I think Pikachu and Zekrom Premium Collection box, exclusive to GameStop, releasing on November 1st, just like the other 2 boxes. This is the second place box. We talked about this box and the other box that we're going to be mentioning here in a hot second. The Tag All-Stars gold versions of Pikachu and Zekrom are making their way. You're going to get a jumbo card. You're going to get the Pikachu Zekrom gold card. And you're going to get 10 booster packs along with it. I assume it's going to be like 4 Evolving Skies, 4 Chilling Rain, 2 Battle Styles, probably somewhere around there. I don't think we know for sure, but
yeah, something like that.
I think that would be a good guess.
Yeah, unless they have some excess GX era inventory, but I doubt that at this point.
Do you think they still have Steam Siege?
They might. They might, Jake. And that's why it's hiding behind the promo.
Yeah, that's why. But I think Pikachu Zekrom, like, I think if you wanted to get this box, like, because Pikachu and Zekrom was such a dominant deck, not only in standard, but also in expanded, it's just so good that, especially if you're trying to build old decks or maybe for expanded, like, this is a pretty good way to bling out your Pikachu and Zekrom. And Pikachu is a gold Pokemon and Zekrom's a black Pokemon, so it pretty much like fits perfectly. But
yeah,
that's not gonna be the real money winner, Shaun. What is?
Walmart won the lottery here and is getting the Reshiram and Charizard gold card. Exact same style of box, it's just a slightly different card and artwork. I'm a little surprised. I wonder, because like all these companies, right, when they say we're going to give these exclusives out to these stores, obviously I don't think each of the stores knew that the other product existed, because like this was obviously the best one, obviously. And then like, look, don't get me wrong, gold Pikachu and Zekrom, also cool. How GameStop managed to get that over Target surprises me.
I don't know if I necessarily believe that, because like if you look at Target is the all-around store, right? Is like the all-around hip store. You know, this is coming with squishable toys. This is coming with with a bunch of packs and some promo cards, like multiple promo cards. Like, I feel like this fits Target really, really well. I think for what Target broadcasts itself to be. And I think Walmart getting the Charizard, I think, is better than the Pikachu and Zekrom.
Yes.
I agree. But if we look at GameStop, like, think about GameStop's promos that they've had.
Oh, yeah.
And those stamps, like, half of the promos that have released in the last year at GameStop aren't even like actual promos. They're just like the card
Stamped.
in wrapping.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think GameStop, even though they're kind of the loser, they're kind of still a winner because they got a whole collection box.
I will say the one thing I'm surprised of, you do remember that there is a gold Mewtwo and Mew card from Tag All-Stars that we didn't get. I'm surprised, actually, that Mewtwo and Mew didn't make its way over here in the Target, because that would have made sense to have all three at once in 3 different stores, like thematically, you know?
I do agree with that. I do think it's kind of weird that Mew and Mewtwo don't get in. But if you think of like the top 2 Pokemon, it's Charizard and Pikachu. Like those are arguably like some of the top 2 Pokemon, aside from like Greninja, which didn't get a tag team. So throw that sucker out of here. Those are like the top 2 Pokemon ever.
Greninja and Zoroark.
And especially the most recognizable Pokemon, I would say, at least in like America.
Greninja and Zoroark did have a tag team, Jake. It's just it was not played very much.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I 100% forgot about that card.
Don't worry, most people did.
But anyways, I still going on the basis of like they're the most recognizable characters, I feel like, in America. So it doesn't surprise me that Mew and Mewtwo didn't get a box. It does kind of suck though, because like that would have been a sick card, because that would have been played all the time, because Mewtwo and Mew is a decent deck and expanded to play.
I mean, you have access to, like, when Mewtwo and Mew came out and was playable here, you didn't actually have the ability to play with every GX card in standard format. But in expanded, like, there is no limitation. Every GX card, and, you know, if they ever do a rotation for expanded, Mewtwo and Mew will only get more powerful as the, you know, black and white or the XY era eventually maybe rotates out. Because then, like, the competition of cards that are broken, that are older, rotates out. Yeah, it's cool card. Cool card.
It's very, very interesting, Shaun. But do you want to talk about some cool cards that released this weekend?
Let's go for it.
There was a new product that released over the weekend. The VUnions made their way out to few hands, I will say. If you tried to buy VUnion codes, holy moly, they were expensive and they were not that plentiful. A lot of stores that were going around, I know my buddy back in Indianapolis, he was looking for VUnion stuff, and a lot of the shops that he was going to, the store owners had no idea what the VUnion boxes were. Shaun, were you able to either find any, or did you look? Or I didn't really look. I was a little bit busy.
I didn't look because I didn't go to any stores this weekend. I'm sure when I go to stores sometime this week, I'll either see them or hear that they all sold out. One of the two.
I mean, at least ask them.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's like, you know, because the codes are selling for so much, at least right now, it's almost like you could buy the box, keep all the cards, and subsidize a significant portion of the box's cost just by selling the code, which is pretty wild comparative to like what, you know, because you can't pull these in packs. They're not really, from what I heard, on the trade ladder much. Because like,
well, I mean, because it's really interesting because there's so few. I mean, Potown, I'm not affiliated with anybody, so I'm just going to call out the first price that I see. I click the first link, Mewtwo VUnion Special Collection Box, Pokemon TCG live code, $15 for this code. $15.
Oh, God.
For the code that just gives you the VUnion and a Burnett, I think.
Yeah, I was going to say, it gives you the Professor.
Does it give you a Burnett?
I think it would, because it's a promo. So the promo comes with the pack. So there's no other way to get Professor Burnett or Burnett. So yeah, I think you would get both. And the problem is
PTCGO store, $15, same code.
Yeah, I think it's wild because they might be a fun mechanic, but they are ultimately not And we'll talk about them, but like they're ultimately not that competitive right now. Like maybe somebody will break VUnions, but like I would say right now they're not necessarily the most competitive. So agreeing to pay $15 for just one of these is like, dang, you're committing, huh? You're gonna build this dang deck.
I would not pay $15 for those codes.
No.
That's actually outrageous in my opinion. I just can't wait for PTCG Live when I can dust my 8,000 reverse hollow quick balls to trade up for Mewtwo VUnion's right leg.
You know, that's a good question. I actually don't know. I'll be interested to see how they treat promos like this in PTCG Live. Like, do you dust for each part? Because like the way that they're selling the codes and selling the packs is like you cannot get only one part. That is not possible, right?
Yeah, you would just get the whole thing.
So they may have a coin. They might even introduce coins in order to redeem it for the entire VUnion. That would make sense for these cards specifically.
I just want the dusting mechanic and just turning my dust into actual cards so that I don't have to trade 35 packs for a single Umbreon VMAX, Shaun. But we've got some first impressions, Shaun, about these VUnions. We've seen a couple people playing around with them. We'll pick a card, we'll read the card, and see like what kind of decks that we've seen it in. So, Shaun, which one do you want to go over first?
I just clicked on the first one, Mewtwo. Why not? So I would say I did watch a little bit of gameplay of Mewtwo, and it has some really, of all three of the cards, I would say Mewtwo seems to have the most support at getting it onto the field and powering it up, specifically with Shadow Rider Calyrex. So Shadow Rider has a number of cards that help. Obviously, it's got the Shadow Rider ability, which will draw you cards when you attach energy. So it accelerates, it draws you cards. Cool, great, done. You can also play the Galarian Moltres V and have it be a usable card in the deck, which will let you discard cards to draw.
Discard 2 cards from your hand, draw 1.
Which is critical, right? Like if you draw into these, you still got to discard them in some form or fashion. So the ability to discard 2 cards and also have a bench sitter that can attack if you need to, as opposed to just, you know, some of the other decks like run bench sitters that do absolutely nothing but mess up your prize trade game.
I think one of the biggest things that I've seen about this VUnion is, one, photon barrier, preventing all the effects from your opponent's Pokemon done to this Pokemon, I think is very nice. I think people are excited about that ability a little bit, but I think the most exciting thing is Psy-Splosion with 2 psychic energies and 1 colorless. You put 16 damage counters on your opponent's Pokemon in any way you'd like. There's a lot of good math that you can do with that, specifically in an Inteleon meta, Shaun.
Yes. Yeah, that's if you think about it, that's Espeon and Deoxys GX attack when you have all of the extra energy on it. Just as an attack. I
don't remember how many energy it was, but I know it was not done super. I think it might have been 6. It was always in Welder Mewtwo that it was done, or like maybe Malamar, maybe.
Yeah, it was stupid expensive to get off the kicker combo, which is like the bonus amount. Yeah, and
like you were saying with Shadow Rider, you know, the energy acceleration that it has, you know, accelerate a psychic energy to a Pokemon, draw 2 cards. Like it's very, very easy once you get this thing on the field, especially for a Shadow Rider deck, to be able to get these attacks going. I mean, for 4 energies, 3 psychic, 1 colorless, you could just straight up do 300 damage, which knocks out a lot of different things, especially maybe if you chipped something with Shadow Rider earlier or whatever.
Yeah.
Or maybe you did an Astral Barrage.
Or maybe you did a Psy-Splosion and then you clean up with a final burn or whatever. Right, to your point, like there's a whole number of like combos that you can do with this. So who was I seeing play this? I think I was watching the Sableye, Mitch. I was watching Mitch play this deck. And it did, because of all of you have like quick balls and evolution incense, but you also have that fog crystal, which helps you to draw out. So basically it makes the engine for finding and getting Mewtwo into the trash very consistent, right? You get into your Shadow Riders, your VMAX very easily. You can find your Moltres, like you can accelerate your energy, like all of that is made easy so that like once you get the cards in your hand, you can actually do something with it to discard it. I think that is why Mewtwo is probably the most easily played of all the cards. I don't know if it's the best, but it's the most easily played.
I will say one card that I think is a trend across all of the VUnions that we can talk about is Familiar Bell. Shaun, do you remember what Familiar Bell is?
I do, but Jake, you please explain to our audience.
So Familiar Bell from Darkness Ablaze, for those of you that don't remember, is a trainer card. Search your deck for a Pokemon with the same name as the Pokemon in your discard pile, reveal it, put it in your hand, then shuffle your deck. So this is an excellent card to pair with VUnions because you get one VUnion in the discard, whether that's Quick Ball or Articuno or stuff like that. And then all of a sudden, you can grab another one with Familiar Bell and you can start grabbing them, picking them up one by one. So I think that that's an excellent way to get these VUnions out of the deck. I don't know if it's the best way, but when I saw it being done the other day, I was like, oh my gosh, that's like a really smart thing. And that works out pretty well, in my opinion.
Yeah, I would agree. Like when I saw people playing it, it definitely clicked. I was like, oh, because like, you know, I think at first people were like, oh, there's no way to search them directly. And it's like, well, actually, once you get one in the discard, Familiar Bells are all live. So you don't even need to play a 4 of Familiar Bell because technically 3 is all you will ever need if once you get one in. So you could play like a 2 of line even, right? A 2 or a 3 of line of Familiar Bell with this. And yeah, to Jake's point, like that is the one way you can search these cards out. And I do think that was a nice ruling on their part to say each piece of this card is technically called Mewtwo VUnion. And that had a lot of synergy with a card that they'd printed several sets before. So good to see from them that, you know, they recognized what they'd already designed from a card perspective.
I will say with Mewtwo VUnion in Shadow Rider Calyrex decks, I think the deck works well when you don't have to use Mewtwo VUnion. When you just do regular Shadow Rider things, I think that's kind of, at this point at least, the best version of the deck. Mewtwo VUnion just being an option that you can do as something like in the late game or whatever. Because remember, Shaun, these Pokemon have 310 HP. This Pokemon is smaller than the VMAX of Shadow Rider Calyrex.
Yeah, that's the one thing that I would say in general, also noticing the gameplay, that the people playing their decks spent so much time and energy, like, I want to get the VUnion out and I want to show that. And I'm like, but that probably meant making plays or thinking about your gameplay in a way that was not optimal. So like if you're playing the deck in a way that like you want to win or could play competitively, you're going out of your way to do a thing that should not be what you're doing. And that's the main problem. It's so much energy and resources and whatever to doing this combo that like there's better ways. There's just better ways.
It's very interesting. I will say though, like we're kind of bagging on the VUnions a little bit right now. This is probably the animation for VUnion when you get that sucker on the field. It's probably the best animation that Direwolf Digital has ever done on PTCGO, hands down, Shaun.
Yeah, I agree. When I saw that on Mitch and Little Dark Fury's videos, I was just like, yeah, okay, that's cool. That's cool. Like, because what they do, if you haven't had the chance to play the card or see somebody play it, they like fuse them all together in this cool animation, and it's like one card. Very neat. It's a very cool animation.
We would show you, but we don't have the codes.
No.
Because they don't exist and they're $15. But anyways, Shaun, let's move on to Zacian VUnion. Now, Zacian VUnion, we know all about Zacian because, well, Zacian V is probably one of the best cards in standard since its release, since Sword and Shield, and it's been running amok, but it's got a plethora of different attacks. You can use Union Gate for 1 colorless energy to attach 2 metal energy cards from your discard pile to the Pokemon. Don't do that. If you're
spending a turn doing that, then you're using this wrong.
Yeah, don't try not to ever. If you use Union Gate, you're probably in a bad position.
Yes.
But the big attack that people usually use, Sean, is Master Blade for 3 metals and 1 colorless, 340 damage. Knocks out everything, I believe.
Yeah, everything that doesn't have some sort of a modifier, right? Like extra HP or damage reduction. It just takes it out.
It just absolutely blows it up. Discard 3 energy from this Pokemon, which honestly, like, if you're using Zacian VUnion, in my opinion, this is the most that I've really seen it. You're using it as kind of like the finisher or the game ender, per se. You know, somebody throws a giant Pokemon in front of you. You don't have enough resources to power up 2 Zacian Vs or whatever to 2-shot it or something like that. You power up this 1 VUnion, you whack it in the face, and you say, I'll take my last 3 prizes, GG's.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the problem that you're going to run into with this, I'm not trying to be the negative one, but the problem that you have with this is it is 4 energy, right? So to, in one turn, bring this out and hit 340, like, I want to say it was Mitch's video again. He did manage it. And it's because he was playing the Bronzong package. The Bronzong that allows you to move your metal energy from one of your metal Pokemon to another, right? Just pretty, you know, it's a great ability. I don't think it's played very often because, like, most metal decks right now are, like, straight Zacian V, which, you know, you don't need that. They're going to die anyways. So unless you're playing the Bronzong package, the odds that you're going to have 3 metal saucers in hand and an attachment and get this out and have it be on the bench and then be able to switch to it's just a lot of work. So I would say to the point Jake was making about if this is going to be a closer, if that's how you're thinking about it, Bronzong is probably the way to go.
And also, like, reminder, like, you could get this down early. You don't have to get it out right away.
That's true.
Right? You can get it out at the exact point that you need it to, or that you can feel like you can get it on, or you can get it going in terms of attacking and whatnot. And I mean, we have cards also like Raihan in the format, you know, being able to accelerate 1 energy, just boom right there, and then grabbing anything you want from the deck, whether that's like a Crobat, whether that's some sort of more draw support with like Articuno V or whatever, getting your Bronzong, a switch to move the energies, like all these different things is very cool. And I don't think is like that bad of a situation. I mean, doing 340 damage, like we've seen with Zacian V, you know, Zacian V being able to knock out all of these different Pokemon, especially when ADP was around when it first came in the standard format, you know, super oppressive. Just being able to knock anything out. And it's the same concept with this VUnion, except not as consistent.
I want to say, do we know if the Rusty Sword works with the VUnion?
No, the Rusted Sword does not work with the V. I believe that's an actual ruling that has been talked about by several people.
I mean, not that you need it for 340 damage. That seems...
Sean is trying to hit 400 damage in a single turn without weakness.
But I do think Cape of Toughness would work on this guy because it is a basic Pokemon.
Does it say basic on it? It doesn't say basic. It says specifically VUnion, which is why I don't think you can get it with like quick balls and stuff.
That's true, but that's also because like when it's not all on the field, each of its pieces is not considered a basic on its own. Like you can't start with it. But when it is assembled onto the field, I don't know. Viewers, tweet at us if you know the ruling. The reason I say this is because like once it's on the field, it is a Pokemon, and it is considered a basic in that it can hit through Zamazenta, right? Like Zamazenta doesn't stop it. So like,
yeah, because Zamazenta just says VMAX, right?
True, and it's not a VMAX. So I guess you'd have to test it,
but it's not a VMAX.
I guess you'd have to see like, can this? Yeah, are there any ones that stop evolution attacks? And then how would this interact with that? I don't know.
I don't think it's technically an evolution. So if I had to take a gander, we didn't prepare to bring up these points and whatnot. So we don't have any like information like, oh, I have a Judge Book 3.1.2 ruling.
Yeah.
No, we don't have that on hand at all. But we'll try to figure it out. We'll try to figure it out by next podcast.
I will say on PTCGO, if you have it, assemble it in a game. Throw a Cape of Toughness on and see what happens. See if they allow you.
Just try it out.
Just try it out.
Try it out.
It's fine.
We'll see what happens. But Shaun, let's go to the final card of this. Is this one your favorite?
Yeah, this would be the one that I think lends itself the most to, if you can build a deck that can incorporate it and can power it up, and I think this one lends itself to the most skilled gameplay. And that is, it's got 3 abilities, which is buck wild. Like a single card with 3 abilities. It's got Ninja Body. Whenever your opponent plays a card from their hand, prevent all effects of that card done to this Pokemon. So it is Crushing Hammer proof. It is Escape Rope proof, I believe. There's probably other items that people might play that would affect you. I don't know what they are, but does it? Yeah, it says item card. Yeah, so it is, you can stop certain things. The second is like the Pokemon can't be poisoned. Fine. And the third is once during your turn, you may have your opponent reveal their hand, which, depending on...
In a format with Marnie.
Right. Or boss, when you're like, I'm thinking of a play. Do you have boss in hand? Hold on, let me just see that hand real quick. Not useless. But obviously the big one here is the attack of its right leg and growing area. The Twisted Shuriken. This attack does 100 damage to each of your opponent's benched Pokemon.
And that is for 2 water and 1 colorless, by the way. So, especially, Shaun, we've talked about, I've already mentioned, we're in an Inteleon meta. We talked about the Inteleon meta for the last 7,000 years here on this channel. Literally, a title of one of our episodes was the Inteleon meta. Yes. But this right here, just doing 100 damage everywhere as well, can bode so well for your game, because that's so much damage, because we are in a format where boards get filled. Get filled. People are playing Suicune. Suicune is one of the good decks right now, like one of the top decks. Everybody's playing Inteleon. People are playing Lotad. We've still got Crobats going on. Shadow Rider has to get all 4 Shadow Rider VMAX on turn 2, or else it's a loss. And one of the decks that we're going to mention here in a bit, Single Strike Urshifu, having multiple Urshifus, Umbreons. I almost said Eevee. It's an evolution. Umbreons, also Houndooms as well. So everybody's filling up their bench right now, and just being able to put out 600 damage at least is pretty bonkers in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. I mean, it says 100 damage to each of your opponent's bench Pokemon, but in reality, it's kind of a 500 damage because 5 bench, right?
Oh yeah, that's right. Bench Pokemon. I'm sorry, 500 damage. You're right. I can math.
That's still wild, and it's interesting to me that they have put basically 2 GX attacks on 2 of these different cards. Like obviously Espeon Deoxys, big GX attacks, and this one is Magikarp and Wailord's GX attack, and if you think about combining this with, other Pokemon, people are playing this with Suicune because it's a great 2 prize basic attacker for 2 energy. Really nice. You could play around with the kind of engine you want to run with this. Do you want to run Frostmoth? Do you want to run Melanie? I think there's a few different things you could do there. The question that I have is this the closer for a spread deck? Because if you think about spread decks, right? Obviously Weezing is no longer in the format, but the thing about those decks is you don't try to win quickly. You play a single prize archetype, you spread some damage around for a whole game, right? And then if you have a turn where you can bring this Greninja in and do this attack on 1 turn to win, to me that, rather than trying to take attacks and prizes with Suicune, it may actually be better suited in a single prize deck. Because you can never start with Greninja VUnion. So there is no risk of you ever starting it. So if you can build a single prize spread deck that uses water energy, I actually think that's where this has a home that I don't think we've seen anybody play yet.
I don't think we really have either. And especially with Inteleon engines, being able to put extra pings on places, you can knock out, just because a Pokemon is a V, doesn't mean that it's not going down sometime in the near future. Or your Inteleons that maybe have extra, or if your opponent's playing a Suicune deck and they put a Cape of Toughness on your Drizzile, or whatever, to put it above 100 HP, pretty interesting. But I do think Frostmoth is maybe the way to go. I think just how with the turbo format is, we have Melanie. Sure, Melanie's great. We have Raihan as well. Raihan is great. But like, it's not like Metal Saucer, right? Where you can get just like 5 energies on the field at once, or like Shadow Rider Calyrex, So I think Frostmoth at this point is one of the better ways to go. It's just, even though the attack is so good and like the card itself, maybe one of the better VUnions, it's just maybe the hardest to like get going, I would say.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. It's like a weird. The only other thing I could think of is if you played a full 4 count of Melanie over Frostmoth, because my thought is like the bench space, right? Because if you're playing Frostmoth, that's only so much space for your Inteleons. If you played the full Melanie count, you could maybe bring in Energy Switch. You mentioned it earlier with Zacian, but I actually think because you have Drizziles that can search out your trainers and maybe even the Shady Dealings Inteleon at a 1 or a 2 of, you could have turns where you can Melanie, you're drawing a lot of cards, and then you energy switch for that 3rd energy. Because if you're Melaning the rest of the game too, odds are you can pop an extra energy for safekeeping somewhere else.
Yeah, it's just again, like this is still like a very new meta. These cards have just been introduced and barely anybody's gotten a hold of them. So like, we're just scratching the surface on these VUnions. But Shaun, this is a question that I did not pose to you before the podcast because I wanted to get your true natural reaction. Do you think they continue with VUnions outside of like the Pikachu celebration one?
Oh man, we were wrong when we talked about Battle Strike and Single Strike. They kept that going, and now they have Fusion Strike. My gut says yes. My gut says that they will at least do another 3 to 6 VUnions, because it's a lot of work to make those animations for just 4 cards too, And so like, I think there was a lot of design thought that went into this. And, we've got a metal, we've got a psychic, we've got a water, and we've got an electric, a lightning type. It wouldn't surprise me if we get one for each of the other types at some point in the future.
I'm going to say no. I think they're done with VUnions. I think they're cool. I think them coming out right now and then coming out in celebrations, I just don't see it. I just don't see it happening. They're cool. They're great. They're awesome. I think that's a really cool concept that they're playing around with. And I think they may be a little bit cooler than like Legends because they're 4 cards and whatnot. But I don't see it. I truthfully don't see it.
I think there's too much money to be made on a Charizard VUnion for them not to print a Charizard VUnion.
Don't you think they would have started off with Charizard VUnion though?
Nah. You get, that's the closer. That's the one that
that's
you end
the closer.
It with, right? I mean, I do think that could be a thing that they like. They could do a Blastoise, a Charizard, and like I don't know.
Venusaur?
Venusaur is not really a fan favorite, but Venusaur. There's a VMAX for Venusaur, right? I don't even.
Yeah, there's a VMAX for Venusaur and Blastoise and Charizard.
Yeah, but like I think that they could do Charizard. They won't do Blastoise if my theory holds that they are only going to do one of each type. But I don't know. I do think though that they could do more. A Charizard VUnion seems too juicy to pass up if I'm the Pokemon company.
Only time will tell. I just want to say I mentioned celebrations there in that part. We haven't really touched on celebrations, but next week, because celebrations is coming out pretty much on October 6th, Shaun and I are basically next week going to make it the Celebrations podcast. We're going to talk all about celebrations, what the products are, where you can find them, what they're going to be, all that information. Because Shaun and I both agree, like, not a lot of people are talking about celebrations right now.
No, I mean, especially from a competitive standpoint, right? Like, because there's not necessarily a lot there. It's like very much a collector set. But I do think, like, we talked about this briefly, and we'll talk about it next week. Like, reprints of older cards is not a thing Pokemon does often, especially reprints that retain the older cards' information. Because, like, obviously Evolutions had reprints, but the reprints, like, I think, did all the reprints from Evolutions, like, I think some of them had differences, like in HP or other stuff. I don't know.
I think a few of them did. Like, I think
Yeah.
Charizard was actually one of them.
Okay.
Maybe.
Yeah. It may have. I don't remember off the top of
I
my
actually don't
head.
know that for sure. That was just a guess. But I have like this weird feeling that like Charizard was different for some odd reason.
But I think this will be cool because there'll be a lot of reprints that, for maybe people looking to get into retro, there might be some playable cards in there that could save you some money. So we'll talk about that next week.
We'll talk about it. Is that all for this week, Sean?
Do we
Are
want
we
to
on
quickly?
time? I know we slid in there. We're like maybe a quick meta update. We could still do a quick meta update.
I think we haven't talked about this yet on the pod, but there's I think two kinds of decks that I think Jake and I were like, this is a little bit new from the last time we talked about the meta. So Jake, do you want to take away with this deck that I'm showing here?
So we're looking at results of the Sunday Open, and one of the things that we want to talk about is this new Rapid Strike box deck. It's essentially Rapid Strike box. We mentioned it briefly before Evolving Skies came out of a deck in Japan that featured Sylveon VMAX, Urshifu VMAX, and Blaziken VMAX, and we were like, how does this deck function? Like, how is it doing well? Like, it just looks like a pile of cards that you put together that all say Rapid Strike. But these decks have actually been doing decently in the meta lately, basically like a counter box of sorts. Sylveon V, for anyone who doesn't know, has two different attacks, or VMAX, I should say, has two different attacks. The first one, you don't really need to think about it at all. But for 3 colorless, Max Harmony 70 plus. This attack does 30 more damage for each different type of Pokemon on your bench. And if you look at this deck list specifically, not only is Sylveon V a Psychic Pokemon, but there's also a Fighting Pokemon in Urshifu, Fire Pokemon in Blaziken, Water Pokemon in Remoraid, Dark Pokemon in Crobat, and then also a Grass Pokemon in Leafeon. You may be thinking, Jake, Leafeon is not a Rapid Strike Pokemon, but hey, Leafeon's got that ability of accelerating energy through its ability. So you pop a couple grass energies in that deck and boom, shakalaka, you're ready to rock and roll.
Yep.
It's really just a counter box, Sean.
Yeah, I mean, you're hitting for Psychic weakness with the Sylveon. You're hitting for Fighting weakness with the Rapid Strike, Urshifu. And something we did mention a few weeks ago, which was like, hey, there's not a lot of fire out there because it's not a great archetype currently. But this deck makes use of it with Blaziken. So, like, because Blaziken VMAX second attack is just colorless energy, you could do 130 and then attach energy
Knock
to
out
things.
a Zacian due to weakness, doing 260. Like, that's the biggest deal about it. Like, I think that's really why Blaziken is in the well, that and being able to move all these types of energies, because Blaziken V, for anyone that doesn't know, not only does it do the 130, but choose up to 2 of your bench Rapid Strike Pokemon and attach an energy card from your discard pile to each of them. So it specifically says an energy card. It doesn't specify basic energy, doesn't say Rapid Strike energy, right? So you can accelerate, at least looking at this deck list, you can accelerate the Rapid Strike energy, the Capture energies, or the Grass energies, whichever ones. It's just an energy card.
And that's huge, because think about, like, setting up, Rapid Strike finishes, right? You do the 130, it sets up, enough damage to where maybe Rapid Strike can come in. You use the attack earlier, you did 120 to 2, and now you've got 130 onto another, and you've refilled that Rapid Strike energy that usually it goes away forever, right? And like, nope, it's back. So I don't know, this is a really interesting deck. I need to play around with it.
I will say, I think I mentioned Leafeon V accelerating energy to itself. Yes, you can do that, but I think the reason that Leafeon V is played, I should have specified this, is you can attach the grass energy to any of your Pokemon, not just itself. I mean, if you want to play the Leafeon VMAX decks that we've talked about in the past, then yes, probably accelerate to yourself. But in this deck specifically, you probably want to accelerate it to one of your Pokemon. And this is an excellent turn 1 option, in my opinion. Turn 1, you get a Sylveon down, or a Blaziken, or an Urshifu, and then you get an energy, a regular energy, whether that's Rapid Strike energy or Capture energy on top of that. Especially Capture energy, you attach that Capture energy, and boom, you can put a Leafeon V on the field and then accelerate the heck to it.
Yeah, and this deck runs 4 Capture, 4 Rapid Strike, and just two Grass, but it's fine. You don't need a ton of Grass energy necessarily, so
You really just need one.
Yeah.
I mean, even if one of your grass energy is prized, as long as you have one in the deck, like you're probably only using this ability on the first turn of the game because it ends your turn, right?
Yeah.
So you're not going to be attacking anyway or anything like that. So that's my 2 cents on that deck, Shaun.
It's actually very cool. Like of all the decks that I've seen lately, that's one that I'm like, yeah, I could get down with this.
You want to know though, the deck that I've been rooting for ever since the beginning of time in its release, Shaun, the archetype that just makes me want to play the game. It is One Punch Fu, which is what I call it. One Punch Fu, play on One Punch Man for any of the anime fans in this podcast. But Single Strike Urshifu VMAX. Such a cool card. Such a beautiful, beautiful card, Shaun. We know Gmax 1 blow. For 3 fighting, 1 colorless, 270 damage. Discard all energy from this Pokemon. Stack isn't affected by any effects of your opponent's active Pokemon. Hitting through Zamazenta V's ability. And then, Shaun, the biggest thing, though, is it's partnered up with evolutions. Or I should say one evolution, Shaun.
Yes.
Umbreon VMAX. This is a card that, honestly, like, we're like, oh my gosh, this card is so good. Like, this is it's a free boss's orders. But at the very beginning of Evolving Skies, it didn't necessarily get a lot of limelight. I think both Shaun and I can agree. With the ability Dark Signal, when you play this Pokemon from your hand to evolve one of your Pokemon during your turn, you may switch one of your opponent's bench Pokemon with their active. It's a free boss's order.
Yeah. I mean, it's a free boss, and the other amazing thing about this, in this deck in particular, is that you're hitting Dark Weakness, which is great for Shadow Rider. So, like, you know, it's the other Dark deck, Eternatus VMAX, is not really seeing a lot of play comparatively. It's seeing some, but it's not nearly as popular as it was pre-rotation and all that. So Shadow Rider is kind of sitting out here like, hey, if nobody's going to be playing Dark decks, so obviously Umbreon can fill that void, but not have to be a Dark-only deck, right? Like, you can do this, and you can play the Single Strike and get those big one-hit knockouts, either for weakness or with the Single Strike energy that adds 20 more damage to your hit. So you get 3 of those bad boys on, and all of a sudden you're doing not 270, but 330.
I think one of the decks that is noted that counters, or that is countered by the evolutions, Shadow Rider, for anyone who has been following the competitive scene, Shadow Rider has really taken a dip. Not a lot of top results with Shadow Rider. I think Justin Basil didn't even put it in his like top 10 graphic, like top 10 archetypes from the other day. I'm looking it up right now. But one of the big decks that I think it really, really counters is Dragapult. Dragapult has skyrocketed.
That's true.
Because of the Inteleon engine and the Inteleon meta that we're in. Dragapult is absolutely skyrocketed as one of the better decks in the meta as of right now, and it's pretty doggone good. And so with that Dark Weakness as well, I would say Umbreon is just licking its chops, Shaun.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, it's wild to me that, like, the, rotation happened a few weeks back, and I think at first, Shadow Rider was played quite a bit. And then obviously Dragapult took over, and now Single Strike with Umbreon is on the rise, and you have the Sylveon decks. And, I do think there's an element right now of the format that is very rock, paper, scissors, which people have said, right? You've got weakness playing a really big factor because of the variety of viable Pokemon of different types that can be put together, but I think that's interesting. That's more interesting deck building than I think formats of the past, where it's like Pikarom.
Boss game.
Right. Like, when you think about Pikarom, what Pokemon are you pairing with Pikarom that is of a different type? None. Right? Reshizard, when that deck was popular, or Welder, outside of like Mewtwo and Mew, Welder decks were like usually like all fire Pokemon. And Mewtwo and Mew was the exception. And so it feels nice that, like, you can have a deck that's like kind of this weird mix of Pokemon that, like, I don't know if the game designers thought of these going together, but they work really well. So
Sean, I just DM'd you a graphic that Justin made about the top 8 decks right now in the format based on different data. If you want to look at that, maybe show that on screen real quick, because I think it would be very good, not only because we haven't, I'll be honest, we haven't super talked about the meta the last several podcasts. So this will be good for telling people about kind of what's on right now, especially as we move into Evolving Skies format. Are you got it, Sean?
It takes a second. I had to switch the type of screen that I'm capturing, but there we go.
Oh, I gotcha. So if you're looking at this graphic on YouTube, you see it as there right now, but I'm going to say it for all of our listeners that are in the Apple and Spotify form. So I'm going to go from bottom to top. The tier 3 deck, less than 6% of the top archetypes. Leafeon VMAX rounding out the chart at number 8. You move into the tier 2. 7th place, Rapid Strike Urshifu VMAX, really fallen from last couple formats, I would say. But that's just regular Rapid Strike Urshifu, because at number 6, Sylveon VMAX, which we talked about, utilizes that Rapid Strike Urshifu in that counter box. 5th, you got Zacian V. Broken card, we already know this. 4th, Jolteon VMAX rounding out the tier 2s. And then tier 1s going from Suicune at 3rd. Suicune V with Ludicolo's and Inteleons. Number 2 is Umbreon VMAX, a deck that we just talked about. Umbreon and Single Strike Urshifu. And then number 1, the number 1 Psychic deck, Sean, pushing out Shadow Rider back in its glory, Dragapult VMAX.
It's wild to me that both of the riders, Shadow and Ice, are not even on this list. They're just not even here.
It's absolutely insane. I agree, because like they were they were just the 2 best decks in format.
Yeah, it's it does make you feel like I don't know what cards to buy, because the second I buy something, it's not relevant anymore. But I think this is very cool.
I think the great thing about right now is just build whatever you think is fun, and then play that. Like It's not like in prior formats where you're like, I have to build one of 2 decks or 3 decks because those are the ones that win. Like we talked about, there are plenty of decks that do well right now. The meta is super diverse in comparison to the last 2 years, 1 year, year and a half.
Mm-hmm. I think the one thing that the format is missing, which is really sad right now, is any sort of truly viable single prize deck. Like there are some fringe ones, but the single prize decks are really struggling right now. But you got Malamar Rapid Strike, fun deck to play in my opinion. Very cheap as well. Easy to build. You can certainly you can certainly build a few decks, and if you pilot them well, maybe they'll do all right. But there is not, like Spiritomb, or if you think back to other formats, even like way back when we started, like Zap Beast, there was always like 1 or 2 single prize decks that were nice entire meta responses. Whereas now it feels like if you're going to run a single prize deck, it really only has a couple of good matchups at most. And that's the one thing, if you had to make a wish of like, what's the one thing you wish this format could have to make it perfect, that would be it. Just that option. But
you know what I do wish though, Sean? I wish that everybody listening and watching, and including yourself, has an excellent rest of the day, because that's a wrap for this podcast. Sean, do you have any final thoughts?
No, just go out there and enjoy the game, like Jake said, because you can probably
celebrations
play
next week.
Yes,
celebrations next week. Prepare your wallets. We'll be letting you know what all you need to know.